to our panel on helping global funding solutions for women and their programs around the world. So we're going to spend a little time talking about OneMama and the organization that is funding and organizing this. I am Siobhan Neilland, and I'm the CEO and founder of OneMama.org, which you're going to hear more about. And I was going to wait for a couple more people that are joining right now. I know the button just opened up. So I'm going to start a video for everyone to see so you can hear a little bit about what our organization does. And then we're going to dive deeper into figuring out how you as an organization can create your own funding solutions for your organization. But before we start that, I want to do a special prayer just for anyone who's joining from any lands, whatever sacred lands that we all have our feet on at this moment. We thank all the Indigenous mothers and fathers and families that have held space and sacred space for the lands that we now stand on. We open our hearts to be able to listen and hear and say and do what is right and the best for all people on all lands in every possible way that we can. And we lift up women and families and communities and honor all the great work and all of the beautiful voices that are needing to be heard in this beautiful OneMama planet. All right, with that, I am going to share my screen and start a little video for you. So when I first came to this community, there was not a lot going on. There was a lot of sadness, a lot of deaths with HIV, but it wasn't talked about. Most people weren't getting HIV testing. Most people were having their babies with no medical supplies. So you really have no idea who had HIV or who did not. Children were dying in these villages because there were no services or government support, no health care, nothing. Nobody's ever asked these communities what it is they want. They just imposed what they believed is right versus asking the community members what they actually believed they needed. One man had tears in his eyes and he looked at me and he said, "I love that you dream so big for us, but our community's never done anything like that and I don't think we can. We love that you want to." These rural communities definitely know what their basic needs are and that all they need is to be empowered. And OneMama is here to show them how to do it. OneMama's efforts are built around a 3-tier model that can be replicated in the hardest to reach places around the planet. This is based on an integral infrastructure, the birthing clinic, the medical clinic, and the community center, where nurturing this model allows for a community to be 100% self-sustainable within 5 to 10 years. We really want to see this model replicated in 250 clinics around the world, ultimately eliminating the statistic of rural and impoverished communities having babies in these kinds of conditions. The core of any family is the mother, a mama. Life starts with her and it's nurtured because of her. It is said if the women of a community are empowered and educated, the family is educated and moves in status. It's because of the OneMama economic and educational empowerment program that we have created awareness around these issues around birthing, personal hygiene, prevention of the protection from malaria, HIV, STDs, as well as basic health care. And now they're actively being discussed and solutioned by the OneMama model in these communities. Unlike other NGOs or other organizations who spend lots of money in different things which don't really help people on the grassroots, OneMama would be very unique an organization because it's standing for the people of this country and it's standing for the poor. Children used to die more often of tetanus after birth. And
when in Kenya children are immunized for tetanus, then we are having more or less the same. So OneMama is really coming in to do all what would be necessary for the people so that they can get out from poverty. And that is a very brilliant idea. I embrace it with all my heart.
OneMama is one of the few nonprofit organizations in the world that I know of whose beneficiaries receive 100% of the donations and proceeds from their own products, the OneMama collection, and can do so in part because of the for-profit Siobhan products, an all-natural cosmetic line for men and women that I created to be the long-term funding machine for OneMama's U.S. operations, as well as building the 250 clinics around the world. This entire movement isn't just about enhancing one community. It's about creating a new global economy that utilizes purchasing power, community building, and joy in smart. Sorry. Can create global impact through social change. OneMama empowers our volunteers, staff, trainers, and OneMama members with new skills. We have sourced better materials. We help create thriving businesses and methodologies. We teach them about technical skills, trends, and how to improve so that with the next time we come, they can develop those skills and use them to grow their business. We buy the products or crops that they make and we sell them on a global or local marketplace. Our model really does work. We ensure that local populations utilize these skills and cultivate them, and that they are continually worked on after volunteers leave. The OneMama model proves we don't have to be there 100% of the time forever. We just have to be there enough for them to become 100% self-sustainable. We can do this. We can achieve this. We can truly eliminate world poverty statistics through these 250 plus clinics. And all it takes is you, me, and OneMama. It's hard to try to put in these little bullet points my life's work and represent a community that I love and give them justice and not, I don't know, and not mess it up. So. Give now to finish this clinic and help save lives. Visit onemama.org. Thank you, everybody. I am Siobhan Neilland again, and I am the CEO and founder of OneMama and the sponsor of this session today. And I miss my family so much. That's Mama Jamira's yelling in the end. Sometimes I forget I haven't watched the whole video for that long time, and I forget this is my family, and I love them so much. Anyway, so let's get to what we're going to discuss here at hand. So so what does OneMama do? This video gives a nice overview of what OneMama does. We really try to work in communities who live under $1.25 a day and have babies in those conditions. Our original program had started in Uganda. And really, most of this came out of the birth or the loss of a baby. And I got really bad postpartum from it and went to Uganda, well, went all over Africa, but ended up going to Uganda and volunteering with an organization. And I would ultimately meet Mama Jamera, who is the traditional midwife that is at the center of this organization. And I wouldn't know it at the time, but this vision had come to me about what OneMama would be. And I do not believe that while I have the title CEO and founder, I do not really believe this comes from me at all. I believe I'm the caretaker of some big vision. And I get to be a mom for thousands in a different way. And Mama Jamera is the mother I never had. And the family and community there is, I got married there. It's, if I was gonna have babies, it was where I probably would have my babies. It is truly a home to me. And that was not what I went there for. I went there to go help and be of service and help others. But I ended up getting a family. And I also really felt this pull or this push to help empower women in these communities, and Mama Jamera and her community to do something different. And what would happen is that I really would realize that, you know, and probably many of you who've attended so many different sessions this week, you start to lead, there's a theme. There's a universal theme about what is happening in the world. There's 4.5 billion women on this planet, and most of them are having some sort of gender violence, economic instability, inequities, and really not in situations that are the highest and the best and empowered. And, you know, what most of I feel like this week in the United Nations, the Commission on the Status of Women, is we really get to see, we have to really look at poverty. We look at the inequalities around birthing and medical care. We look at the inequalities of our clean water and domestic violence and, you know, just the list goes on. And, you know, several sessions this year, I mean, this week I've listened to around genocide and, you know, and rural impoverished women. You know, I could try to get Mama Jamera to be on this call with us today, and the networks are down again. And so, you know, it's just baffling to me how half the planet is consistent of women, and yet we still have very little power and as much influence as we should, considering we are half the population on this globe. And so what Mama does and what I try to do in my own life is like, how do I take the ruins of my own problems and my own situations, and how do I transmute that into something bigger? How do I take the manure of my life and make it bloom? And then I feel, because I had that passion about figuring that in my own problems and in my own life, that is what I sort of started to do with OneMama, or the vision came to me to do, is to take this really powerful community who is so loving and kind and seems to find the joy in anything and everything. How do we take that energy and transmute it into something? And that is the birth of OneMama. We've been here for 14 years. It's hard to believe it's been this long. And the clinic has been self-sustaining and running. Not easy by any means, and definitely a very challenging journey, but it is running, and it is possible to be in these conditions and find ways to empower each other and to hold each other up and find ways to move the needle of change. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the things that have worked, the things that have not worked, how the pandemic has made everything turn upside down and may or may not make it still work. But we're going to talk about, I feel like the theme is, as women, we can't wait for governments, corporations, institutions, men to come in and help us. We have to empower ourselves. And I'm going to introduce you to my board and the women, a panel of speakers who we've all really done what we can to take the situation and try to find ways that we can keep pivoting and keep changing and empowering ourselves and those other women and lifting other women and other families and communities around us up. Do we always do it perfect? No. Do we have lots of problems? Yes. Do we struggled? Is it hard? You know, I was crying before this call because it's a lot. It's just a lot. It's a lot to think about. It never feels like enough. It never feels like we're doing enough. And yet here we are. And when I look back at 14 years, like I see this picture of this clinic, which is on the screen. And, you know, that was a mud hut. And now it's, you know, it's got wings to it. It's a health center, not a mud hut. So things do change and we offer services. So I'm gonna, you know, you'll see that we've got Lisa. She is on our board. She's waving there, and she's going to answer questions. So if you have questions as we go along, we're going to talk about lots of different things. Make sure you put it in the chat, and she's going to collect those chances and ask them for you. We have Abby J. Hunt. She is also on our board, and she is the magic woman behind the scenes. You're going to see lots of entrepreneurial programs that we created to try to keep this ship running. And Abby has been a huge integral part of that because so much of it is digital. You're going to have Jessica is a former board member. She has helped us get to the United Nations and the CSW and participating in that. You have Elizabeth Trammell is also on our board. She found us at the UN from a hashtag, and she does our blogs and writes and volunteers, and she's a stay-at-home mom and trying to stay involved and giving a voice to that. We were supposed to have Benita, who's also on our board and our panel, but she's been having health issues and a few things going on technology-wise, so she was not able to attend today. Super sad about that because she's the most powerful speaker, but you know, she is also always a part of this family. And so if you have any questions, you can text any of them about what it's like to be on the board, or if they're as a panelist, some of the questions you have for them. So, you know, we're going to do everything we can to sort of help get you all the information you need and help create resources for you. Let's see, this slideshow is not really working. This was the original pad that I came to in Mama Jumeirah. She had no medical supplies. She was just using one razor blade and a little fishing kit. And that was really the pivotal thing that sort of helped me realize that something needed to be done. And again, it's not like I came to Africa to go do any of this. This was definitely not my thoughts or purpose. And you know, really what OneMama is it's a birthing clinic, it's a medical center, and it's also an economic sustainability program. And this 3-tier program helps create a sustainable community that has got healthcare and Mama Jumeirah, traditional midwife with the traditional ways of using herbs for birthing at the center. We're one of the only health centers that's been allowed to actually incorporate traditional midwifery with Western medicine. And we primarily focus on pre and postnatal care with both traditional herbs as well as Western care, stopping HIV transmission from mother to baby. We do malaria prevention and treatment for, you know, families. We deal with STDs. We deal with family planning, which has been very challenging with the new political environments where it's harder to get birth control and access to birthing protections. We work on colds and flus and whatever. We try to pick 5 main areas of focus where there's the biggest need, and then along with birthing. And what we found is most community members had not had any type of health care at all. And the only healthcare that they had was that they went to see Mama Jumeirah for their traditional birthing with her. And the only pain medicine they may have had was her traditional herbs. So when we've added these medical services where we're adding things to help with bleeding, to help with pain, on top of what Mama Jumeirah does with her traditional, you know, medicine woman herbs, we've really changed the way, and we've created an adoption for the community to start looking at taking malaria medicines appropriately, looking at taking cold and flu medicines appropriately, looking now at birth control, where birth control was taboo and family planning was taboo to talk about. HIV testing was taboo to talk about. When I first got there, most community members didn't talk about HIV. Nobody would admit that they had any type of association with that. And now community members are proud to take their HIV test. They're proud to do their family planning seminars that we do. There's also lots of taboo around domestic violence. So we really started to work on educating the community, both men and women, not putting the brunt on just women, around education, around domestic violence. And we've really started to see lower incidence of domestic violence. Now, during the lockdown this year, they're still relatively locked down. We have seen those incidences rise because we can't do our domestic violence training. So you really do get to see that when we are able to provide these services, the needle gets moved as far as healthier births, less actual births, more families planning their birthing successions correctly, less troubles for women going back into the field and working after their birth because they are getting the proper care, less instances of domestic violence, and more the economic program. So the third tier of what we do at OneMama is the economic sustainability program. And what that really does is, not only does it make the community really invested in, this is their clinic. This is not, I'm the only person who's not an Indigenous Ugandan. I try to set this up so it's indigenously run, and I work more like an international consultant so that I can teach them other different, programs that I've seen around the world that work, and try to implement those and kind of coach them to be self-supporting. And it's really, it has worked. It's miraculous. And this economic sustainability program, where women learn to grow better crops, to have agricultural crops, to do crafts and clothing, like most of what I'm wearing. You're going to show a little bit of that, do a little show and tell later. But that is, all stuff that the community makes. And as they make that, you'll start to see that they start to feel empowered. They start to feel like they have more ability. There's less, that also is helping less instances of domestic violence when women feel like they have more autonomy and accountability. So those are some of the things that we do here at OneMama. And one of the biggest things that I don't think I would have ever understood until I had started this clinic and run it for 14 years is that the funding is the number one problem. It is the most insane, awful part of the job. Getting malaria every year has not been my problem. Getting, lots of health problems has been not fun, but it's not been as big of a problem as funding. And I know that's why so many of you have come to this session today, is to really look at what are ways that we as a community can support each other, and how. And so I'm just going to share what has worked, what hasn't worked, what we're like this year, we have to pivot everything and we have to try something new and see what happens. But I do know that sharing is how we support each other. I'll share my ideas, you share yours. Everyone who I just introduced to you, we've all been trying to put our heads together to try to see how we can do this differently. And, that's it. I feel like, the 4 billion, I've meant to look it up exactly how many women are on the planet right now, but the 4 billion plus women that are on the planet, if we all just worked together and made a way to support each other through these things, I think the world can be a very different place. And I believe that we are here to do that. And I'm creating this session to create community. And you guys can help support me and I help support you. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen here for a second. So, the things that we really, there's so many issues that are going on in the world right now and about disempowerment. And then I think one of the other areas that we have to think about is
the pandemic has really shown the inequities on this planet in a way that, not that this is new information, but I think it puts it all in our faces in a way that is painful. I live in San Francisco, a very prosperous city, and I work for a very famous corporation, Amazon, and I watch even the women who have access to a nice job and can work from home with a computer are having very similar issues. They are the ones who are doing all the childcare, do not get a break, are having more health problems, are getting still the lack of treatment that they deserve in their healthcare, in this healthcare crisis, comparatively to our male counterparts. What I find so interesting is that I work in these worlds where I work with the Fortune 100 and 500 companies, and then I also work in rural impoverished communities. And the common theme, which we've also seen in these UN CSWs, is that there's inequality, inequity in a way that is so baffling. And so what can we do to support each other? We really have to find more ways that we can empower, take this and rise our voices up to see, not only to say it, which I think this is what the Commission on Status Women is good, is that it's giving women a voice who didn't, not giving them a voice, but helping their voice be heard. But I think what's even more important is that we also have our voices heard and we all move into action. And I'm still experimenting on what that looks like. And my panel of women is really, I know we're all women who are doing our best to try to find new ways to be in support with each other and to create action. So I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about some of the things that we do to sustain ourselves. And once I've done that, I'm gonna then introduce my panel and sort of get their perspectives on ways that they fund themselves, or get a little bit more questions that dive a little bit deeper. And then we'll be taking some questions at the end that Lisa is gonna moderate for us. So if you do have questions, make sure you go ahead and add them. So let's do this. I'm trying to toggle too many things at once. So here are some of the things that I started. Part of what the economic sustainability program piece is really, I started this thing. I came through, we wasn't really planning, and it started right in 2008 when there was a downturn. And so I was trying to find things, crafts that women could make in the community that could fund us, that I could sell here in the US or in Europe, where we have lots of donors. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I've always worked in services. I've always been staffing consulting. I've used to be an entertainer. So this was not my forte, but it came to me in a vision, just like everything else. And I thought, if you can make it so that the women are learning how to take the resources. So we took banana fibers, learned to make paper beads. We learned how to grow different types of crops that might sell on local markets. And the first few years, it took a little while for us to get to that place. But then as the women got better, so what was cool is, as you can see, they're all together and they're also creating more community, and they started dancing more together and they started doing other things. And then on this side of the world, when people wanted to help support OneMama, they were able to, feel like they were a part of it by buying the t-shirt or the hat or the drum or these dresses that were made in the community. And so that they could say, like right now, my outfit, I'm wearing about my outfit could probably save about 150 lives, because every $4 to $5 saves a mother and a baby. So people then would feel proud that they were helping support a community. So we were really trying to not only engage the community, but the community at large, the world. Like, not just donate, but like, how do you get everybody to participate in building a community, a world community? So then we also got noticed by New York Fashion Week, and we became a partner for New York Fashion Week, the charity for New York Fashion Week. We became a charity for the Golden Globes and the Oscars. That didn't really drive a lot of revenue for us or donations, but it did bring a lot of attention, and it helped people stay engaged about our community and also helped with lift the voice of this community. So while we're also trying to help them economically, we're trying to also create a global stage for these rural women who literally do not have running water, electricity. I can't even get a hold of Mama Jumeirah today because the cell phones are dead. There's the impoverished, the lack of access is so hard for someone who lives in the US or lives in technology like I do here in San Francisco to even fathom. So having these different ways to express how we fund ourselves, but also what it means. Like this dress saves 500 lives. It's a custom dress that was made for the Oscars for a celebrity. You know, I wore that dress to Kevin Hart's birthday party, you know, to show, and then celebrities came up to me and asked, right? So these are those kinds of things that trying to use what you have and how do you bring that to a stage to bring these issues. Because most people don't want to talk about these issues. But if someone says, I like your dress, which is what they, you know, I'm using the vanity of women where we only will talk about women's dresses, and I'm turning it. I'm turning it so that we're talking about how many lives we're saving. I feel like all of us who run organizations, we can find some way that we can turn the conversation into normal social situations. I created a makeup line because in 2008, everything went dead. I named it after my nickname because I didn't know what to name it off of. This is a beautiful New York Fashion Week model. I love her. She's one of our beautiful, beautiful women who always helps to donate her time. And we created this makeup line so that would help pay for like Abby or my social media staff, my US operations. So 20 to 40% of that was going to OneMama, and then any extra proceeds would go back to the clinic itself. This way, I was also not taking direct donations. If you wanted to donate to the clinic, you're learning to, you know that money is going directly to Mama Jumeirah and those families and those communities. Whereas if you buy the makeup line, you know that that's going to be paying for the US operations and then also go towards OneMama. And you know that what you're wearing, like I'm wearing all Shaboom today, by the way. You know, right now the makeup line is not doing well. Everything that's happened in the last few years politically and what's happened with COVID, the makeup line's not doing well. The clothing's not doing well. It's the first time in 14 years that a lot of our sustainable programs are not working. But you know, I'm telling you about this because you got to continue to pivot and change. Things work, then they don't, right? And so, but Shaboom Beauty has been a really great way for us to hold space for and pay for the US operations. And I also don't take any money. I use my consulting career to pay my own salary so that I don't have to, again, take anything from OneMama. And these are those kinds of programs that really can make a difference in, you know, how we sort of fund ourselves. So that's what we did do. Now, being that everything's been in lockdown for a year, none of the women can meet to do crafts. None of the women can meet to do the domestic violence training. None of the women, the computers no longer work, which we couldn't get internet there anyway. So that was really struggling. Most of our agriculture we had to stop because we couldn't get the community to meet to take care of those rabbits and the bees. We had to, a lot of the agricultural crops are not selling on the local markets because of everything's locked down. The sandals that we do, all of those things, the clothing, the woman who was helping me design them in Uganda, she was killed 2 years ago. So just a lot of hard knocks on our economic sustainability programs. And these are the things that are the lifeblood. This is what runs the clinic. 100% of it has been sustainable for like the last 7-8 years based on these programs. And now with lockdown, there's no way for the community to move around. They're not even allowed to be on bodas or motorcycles. And so it really is challenging of how do we keep this community self-sustaining. So in my normal Siobhan kind of way, I am pivoting. We're going to pivot. We're pivoting to try to figure out how we can do it differently. So a very dear friend of mine who I stay with, he just died, and his now has orphans. So we are starting a sponsorship. We have a whole community of people who want to, that are in the US and Europe, who want to donate to support and fund his children. So we're creating a sponsorship child fund that is already started and is already starting to generate revenue to support these children and hopefully future children as we go, but also will help, create some revenue for and some donations for OneMama. We were supposed to last summer be in Uganda and building something with this water project. It was built with a Rotary. We had a Rotary partner, and we had a gentleman who built these special sanitizing water devices. So we were going to actually have a water for our whole community, our whole parish, and it was going to also create revenue because we could bottle and sanitize and sell that water. But we now have to put that off for 2 years until I can get there, because right now I can't actually get in Uganda, and the community that is helping us do this can't get there. But this is on the table so that we have a long-term funding, that this would truly make them self-sustaining, and that it's, the goal is to have it less and less international influence. It's more and more that it becomes locally based, but we've still struggled to make that happen. Those are some of the things that we're trying to do now. And then one of the other things that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a second, is that I've also created, all to the help of Abby, to build, let's see, it's really hard to toggle these screens. Let me just tell you. Sorry. All right. Okay, so I have pivoted to build several different both for-profit and nonprofit programs that are going to help try to fund this deficit that we've had for the last 2 years, and with the COVID shutdowns, so that we can see if this will drive revenue. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. My point of all of this is to tell you all this is not for you to come and use all of our services. If you want to, that's great. But what I'm trying to show you is that constantly trying to see, like, what communities do I belong to? What communities, what are my partners here? How are ways that we can get more people engaged and also help fund the clinic? One of them is we've created something called the Fighting for Joy. So this is it's predominantly built for people from the Western world, about how they can, find joy in their life. Most of you don't know this about me, but I was born with no running water and no electricity in Southern California, and I was raised in a sex cult, and I was taken away for child abuse, and I was considered a feral child. So part of where my passion around making and changing things is that I come from a background that you've heard most women talk about in those UN panels this week. I come from impoverished sexual violence, and I am the child of horrific torture, and yet I still try to use that pain and the PTSD from that as a way to transmute. And one of my sayings is fighting for my joy. And some days when you've come through that kind of trauma, the only thing you can do is fight on this moment of joy. And I watch my family in Uganda, they will focus on the joy instead of the food or the crisis. They will focus on being sweet and kind to each other, focus on finding that joy. And so this is a series of 13 months of trainings and sessions about different techniques that you can have to fight for your joy. And the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds, are going to go to fund OneMama. Again, this is sort of my help, my own tools that I created to crawl myself out of those situations. So just a little video to break from If you're watching this, chances are you are trying to find more joy in your life. Let's be honest, we all are. The Fighting for Your Joy community and movement was created to give you hope, light, love, and encouragement, and the opportunity
to give back to others around the world. The idea for building a community full of joy warriors came from when I visited Africa. I witnessed these incredibly joyous women and children dancing and laughing and singing songs. And these women restored the joy that I didn't even know I had lost. They restored my purpose. Towards the end of my trip, I realized that these women, my new best friends and family and community, were fighting for their lives in order to have their babies safely and without disease. Being with them created this spark, this light in me, this vision, an idea of what if I could make a difference? And what if I could do something that would continually thank them for helping me find my joy? Oh, it was life-changing. And through this, the OneMama nonprofit was born. And when you join the Fighting for Your Joy online community and movement, you will get what I call a joy toolkit. The kit contains a ton of free gifts like Siobhan products and OneMama clothing and things, and full access to interviews with me and all these amazing people that are on the Joy Warrior path, and live stream videos, as well as daily practices that I do in my life every day to fight for my joy. Because sometimes life is hard, and I found all these tools to help me find the joy in every moment. But most importantly, you are fighting for the joy of mamas and their babies around the world, because 50% of your monthly subscription helps open clinics and provide medical supplies. This movement was created not only to change their lives of the people who are impoverished and living under $1 a day, but is also changing the lives of everyone, including you, who is involved, so that they can create an abundance of health, prosperity, as well as life, as they always dreamed of. By getting involved in this movement, it's going to change your life in ways you just can't even imagine. The best way to get joy is by far to give joy. If you are fighting for yours, like I am, and want to make a difference in the lives of other women and children around the world and all families, I welcome you to the Fighting for Your Joy online community and movement. Come with me now and let's go fight for joy. So, it's probably a little cheesy, but it works, right? So it's about fighting for joy, finding a way for us to transmute these things and these, another way for me to possibly fund this clinic and fund these types of programs. And the goal is to build 250 of these clinics around the world, wherever women live in $1 a day and have babies in those conditions. And most rural impoverished communities all over the planet, like not just in Africa, not just in India or Russia or South America, also in our Native American tribes here in the US. So these conditions are everywhere, and trying to find ways that we can help fund them, build these programs, because we can't wait for corporate America. We can't wait for the governments to do these things. We can't wait for other people to do these things. So the other program that is actually an inspiration from my husband, that I married in Uganda. Is another this is locally based for San Francisco, and it's called Donation Pickups. And my husband basically does office liquidation for large corporations. And with the pandemic, it's going very, very well because companies are downsizing their offices or selling everything. And so a lot of times they're just going to throw that stuff away. So then he goes and he resells it. So now we're setting it up so that we're setting partnerships with organizations companies who just want to donate it and not try to sell it or throw it away. They donate it to OneMama's Donation Pickups. And then we will partner with either my husband or a few other companies, and they sell these products and these basically mostly office furniture to other organizations. And that is another way that we're starting to generate revenue. And this is still a new thing that we've really been only doing this year, but it's starting to do well. We can only do it locally right now in San Francisco, but we hope to scale this out across the US at least at some point. But right now, these are some of the things that we are trying to do to create new funding since our old funding wasn't working. Some of the things that we still have thousands of these paper beads. We have lots of these beads, which are the domestic violence things that really fund our domestic violence program. We have, baskets that we taught the community to make.
And this is the only thing that's not made in Uganda. It's the superhero, OneMama superhero with our code thing. And the other main thing is like we have them teach them make the OneMama dolls. So usually has a little baby on the back. And these are all things that we still have, a storage unit full of, even though we won't be making any of them in the future, we still have many of these things that you can see in our OneMama store. And you can go I'm not saying that you need to go buy these things or donate to these things, but this is a place, if you're a small nonprofit and you're trying to figure out ways to fund, think about your community, think about how you can get local resourced things that they can have locally to make. So like all of these are local beads. All of this is paper that was made into paper beads. So we tried it, and like all of the fabric from the clothes that I had them make there was very, very hard to find fabric there. So we found t-shirt material was one thing that was made in Uganda. And so we got that in bulk at a discounted rate. And we made our clothing out of that. So always trying to find resources that were locally based that we could fund and use for the long term. So when you're thinking about building out your products and or services or ways that you can fund your profit, your nonprofit or your program or your cause, think about your community that you're supporting, that is the community you're supporting, getting them involved. And then think about your donors or your community you're trying to change their mind. How do you get them engaged? By having people wear something. They're thinking about OneMama every day. By having the logo of care for the children of the earth as if it was their only child on the back of their shirt. They're thinking about these things. And so building out funding programs that help bring people to it, bring their emotional body to your cause is one of the ways that we not only create this community, but we create an engaged community, an engaged movement. I know for sure the only reason OneMama has lasted as long as it has, even though we do not make that much funding, is that we have created an engaged community. We have people who truly feel a part of this, not just the community that's based there, but the community around the world. We have people right now on this call from every continent. And that is, to me, a testament of the kind of work that we want to do. So that's a little bit about all the different funding programs. Again, it wasn't trying to be a pitch. It was more about thinking about how do you get creative in funding your organization. You're going to hear a little bit more from Nancy about how she did that. You're going to hear from Jessica about how she did that. And these are some of the things that, each of us have to find our own way to do that. But here at OneMama, if you want to partner with us and brainstorm about ways to help fund your cause, we would love to be support for you on that. And we'd love to connect with you and see how we can empower each other to let's activate all 4.5 billion women on this planet, and let's do this, is what I'd like to say. All right, so with that, I'm gonna do a little check-in with my crew. Abby, am I on point?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay, awesome. So what I'd like to do now is introduce Jessica. So Jessica is the main reason I am even at the United Nations. She suggested I come bring my work with OneMama to the United Nations and give the community a voice there. I became a Women's Intercultural Network Ugandan International Delegate, I think 7 or 8 years ago. And then a few years later, Jessica helped us become our own consultative status with DPI, Department of Public Information for United Nations. And then recently we now have ECOSOC status as a consultative status with the United Nations as well. So this is our 7th or 8th year going to get the UN together. But actually how I know Jessica is she wrote this amazing book, and my story that's in her book is in the links. You'll get, if you keep looking through the chat, I know that Abby and Lisa and Elizabeth are putting all of the content and information in there about different things. I've got 3 books, and 2 of them, there's links for them if you want to do it. This is the link that we're giving is only my story. It's not the whole one. So if you really want to read the whole book, please go get that. I think Jessica can put a link in there about that for where you can get her book. But what's amazing about this book is it really is, it's in the UN library. It's 50 stories about women who come from torturous situations, honestly, and have overcome that to be shining beams of light. So it's 50 women around the world who talk about poverty, talk about war, torn situations. I'll let her tell a little bit more. I was one of the few North American women who was in that. And pretty much if you're in her story, you've had a crappy life. But anyway, my story is in her, and that is, she asked me to be in her book 10 years ago, 11 years ago?
It was actually 12 years ago now, believe it or not. Yeah. 12 years ago.
So if you get an opportunity to read it, definitely take a bath and take good care of yourself when you read it, because it's intense. But I'm going to let Jessica talk about that and talk a little bit about her publishing company. And then she's going to ask me some questions that are more pointed, so we can dive a little bit deeper, because nobody knows my story better than Jessica. So Jessica, take it away.
I can quote her, actually. that's how involved in the book that I was whenever I was compiling it. Hello, everyone. We are very happy to welcome you to the OneMama panel this afternoon. Well, it's evening my time. I'm coming to you from Munich, Germany, a very snowy Munich, Germany today. And Siobhan basically said it. How I met her is I was looking for women who were both making an impact, but who had overcome significant things in their lives. The 50 Women Anthology series is actually a 2-book series, and I did not set out to write 2 books. I set out to write 1 book, but the amount of stories that came out from the 7-year journey I spent compiling the anthology series were absolutely remarkable. And in the end, when it all came down to it, I just couldn't condense the stories down to 1 or 2 pages each. I just couldn't do it. So I had to make the executive and editorial decision to publish an anthology series, which was not really what I set out to do, but I did anyway. The beautiful thing about the journey that I took with 50 women, and I'm going to share a link with you right now. And this is a piece that I recently published last year in Publishers Weekly, which is the main magazine for the publishing industry in North America. And I had a few things to say about that. So when I went to publish 50 Women, I encountered significant struggle in doing so. And the reason that I did is that I found that women are not represented in the publishing industry as strongly as they could be. And the people running the companies did not see it as a commodity. They did not see women's voices as valuable. Siobhan has a pretty significant social media presence, but there are women from rural communities, one of them being a woman from Brazil that I interviewed who had given birth to like over 10 children in a hut, for example, is not on Twitter. She's just not. And so some of the feedback that I received from the publishers was, and it goes into detail in this Publishers Weekly piece, was, well, these women don't really have a platform, so we're not really interested in publishing this. Or if you interviewed women that had more visibility, we would take notice. And as I said, some of the women are like multi-award winning. They do have visibility, but a lot of them are unheard voices. And that was the point of the books, was to capture women that don't generally get featured. Because what I usually see is we feature the same people over and over again in storytelling. We feature celebrities or people who have significant, like I said, internet presence. But women like Mama Jamira, we don't ever hear from because they're tucked away into remote parts of the world that few of us may ever travel to. And so what truly pulled me into Siobhan's story was actually her connection with the community, was actually Mama Jamira. And then I found out that Siobhan had quite a significant story to tell herself in this solidarity of having grown up in a child sex cult, having been technically an illegitimate child, growing up on the land, living off the land, and having gone through significant hardships in her life. And I thought this story is multifaceted because not only are we looking at a major maternal health issue, which is covered by the Sustainable Development Goals, covered in CEDAW, Maternal health, no one is questioning the maternal health situation globally when COVID has kicked in either. And COVID has set women's rights and women's advancement back decades, if not centuries, as I've said. So when I saw the work Siobhan was doing, I thought, I want to interview this person for this book series about, working in rural communities, and then also incorporate Mama Jamira's story in as well. And then I got Siobhan's narrative. So we ended up, as I said, having a multifaceted story that is actually a hero's journey. And not only are we going through Siobhan's hero's journey, but we're also going through Mama Jamira's hero's journey at the same time as well, as a midwife in an impoverished community globally. So how did I fix this problem that I encountered? And because this panel is about funding solutions, I think there are a lot of women who want to tell their stories, who would like to write a book, but they either don't have the language skills to do so, or they don't have the platform to be noticed as they should be. And I'm here to tell you that you actually can do it without any of that. And there's some people who are wonderful, and they are all over at the Ingram Content Group. And at this group is the ability to publish any book and distribute it globally. And both of the 50 Women books are endorsed. They have endorsements from notable women who have reviewed them. One of my editors, Nancy Adams Taylor, I will mention her by name because she's amazing, has worked with pretty much all the major publishing companies in New York. So the book was approached from an extremely professional angle and distributed globally to, I believe it was 150 countries around the world, that the book can be bought online or in bookstores or through bookstore networks globally. And I did all of this without a central figure telling me how a woman's voice should be presented. Because for me, that was important, is these voices have to be authentic, not through someone else's lens. Siobhan's voice is very authentic. She speaks about a story that is extremely hard to tell in, an eloquent way, tells it with how she's transmuting pain, transmuting the suffering she's endured in her life into solidarity with a global community that is struggling with some of the biggest issues that face women. And this is HIV transmission from mother to baby. This is overall maternal health, having adequate supplies and a clinic to assist a mother deliver her child. Postnatal care as well. Many of these clinics don't even have anything called postnatal care. They've never actually heard of it. So, this story is extremely powerful, but I decided when I published these books that I was not going to allow any central person tell me how women's voices should be spoken. And happy to announce the books have actually won 2 awards so far. Our recent award was we won an Evergreen Medal for World Peace by the Independent Publisher Awards, the IPPY. And we were very honored to have won that because past winners also included Nobel laureate Desmond Tutu. So that was a big honor. And I think for me, winning these awards has proven from the establishment, if you will, that women's voices can be authentic and can be heard that way, and that they don't have to be filtered or edited or changed or adjusted to meet the needs of other people or people in power. And I think that is like an exercise in democracy, even, isn't it? So how I funded the books, there's a multiple ways that I actually did that. One of the ways being through crowdfunding, another way being through grants, another way being through working with NGOs to help build momentum and as like a sister project to NGOs as well. So if you are wanting to do something like this, and of course I did this like, gosh, it must have been like 8 years ago now or 7 years ago. And this is when this technology was very nascent, this global distribution technology for books. Now, the Ingram Spark program is abundant. It's easy to use. I believe it costs, and don't quote me on this, go to the website yourself and look it up. But I believe it now costs like $49 US to submit a manuscript and get global distribution on Ingram Spark. So if I can give any message to anybody, it's do not let your voice be silenced. We have all the tools available to us to have our voices out there and in the way we want to share them, in the mediums we want to share them. We even have virtual reality nowadays. Who would have thought? The tools are there. So don't feel like you need approval from anybody else. What I like to say to people, and I recently said this to a young woman that I'm mentoring, is I said this, I held out my arm and I said, there's your stamp of approval. You've just given it to yourself. Congratulations. So now that I've given you a bit of a background on the books, and Siobhan gave you a background on our work together at the United Nations over the years, I wanted to direct this back to you, Siobhan. I'm going to re-interview you because we kind of need to catch up on that. I haven't interviewed you in the last 12 years, right? So, other than at the UN. So this is going to be a blast from the past, actually, for all of us. And I've prepared some questions for her in advance that I'm very excited to ask. I think one of the big focuses right now is the attention that COVID-19 has been given to rural women in particular. And I think, nobody is denying that COVID-19 has put women in vulnerable situations. It's trapped them at home with abusers. And I think women in rural communities are no exception to that. I remember the first UN session I ever attended, CSW65, was how to bring technology to rural women. And this is still particularly a challenge. So Siobhan, having worked in that space for many years now, I mean, over a decade, how are you seeing COVID-19 impact the women in the OneMama community? That says it all.
I'm kind of interestingly through this whole panel, I'm like on the verge of tears. I'm crying a little bit. I feel so frustrated because it's hard to imagine. I think you actually said it really well when you first started, it has put us back so far. Like, rural women already were so far back. And I cry at night worrying about my community. And not just the Ugandan community, but just so many rural women have no access because with the pandemic, the shutdowns, like in Uganda, there's just layer upon layer of issues. The first is they shut everything down and they're under what I guess most would call a dictatorship. And so there's very little testing. So the country still states that there's very few cases. But the truth of it is there's very little testing happening, except for people who have money and not that many people. There's not a very wealthy country, even in the cities, or really one big city. And I, with a health center, can't get the supplies for my lab to even do COVID testing. So people are dying. And I think there's been a few members of our community that we think have died of COVID, but we have to guess. So just the COVID itself has got so many layers of problems. And I feel so frustrated because I have a clinic, I have resources, and I can't get the supplies or the testing to the village. And it drives me crazy. And then the second layer is the lockdowns. So now you have people you're having families, large families, 10, 20, 30 people living in a very, very small, tight home, which would be, sometimes it's a mud hut, sometimes it's a brick home, but it's very small and very large communities. And the domestic violence increase has spiked in a way that we haven't seen since we had started our work with domestic violence 10 years ago. So I don't even know what that's going to mean. And I don't know how many deaths have happened in that. There's no way for us to track that. I see the women getting together and making the crafts and coming together for family planning and for all of the services we offer at the clinic. There's less community. So, from what I'm gathering, I'm not there because I can't go there right now, is that the community is feeling really isolated. There's more colds and flus. There's more just general low morale. And now the people don't believe COVID even exists. So there starts to become more of the conspiracies and of why the government's shutting things down. And the government completely blacked out their networks. So I literally could not call them, go on the internet, get emails for almost a month because there was another election. And that shut everything down too. So there's just, when we say rural women have no access, like we're talking about literally no digital access. People don't have smartphones. There's no internet. I brought 20 computers to teach the community how to slowly learn how to use computers. All those computers broke. There was no way to connect to the internet. Most of the community didn't feel engaged with it because there's no way for them to connect to the rest of the world or even relate. They feel inadequate because they don't speak the English language, which is what they think is superior because they're taught by colonialism that it is. So there's just all of this, like I could spend an hour just talking about all of the problems. And all I know when I start getting too heavy with this is, how do I empower the solution? And so right now I'm really empowering Mama Jamira. I just had a talk with her this week, making sure her health is good. We're really focusing on her herbal medicine. We're focusing on the community gathering together and distance dancing, trying to remind them to be who they are and to not get stuck in the fear of it. But, this is the first time, this is the longest I've been away from there. And all I have is cryptic conversations with my community. So yeah, we're getting farther and farther apart and harder to understand. And usually when I go there, I see a lot more that's not spoken about. So domestic violence, different incidences of things that they just get used to and don't even think to call out to me as a leader. So yeah, I'm nervous to go back. I think the soonest I'll probably be able to get back there would be possibly December this year, but probably more like next summer when the vaccine is readily. And think about the vaccine. You have to have refrigeration.
That's another issue, yeah.
You have to have refrigeration. We don't have consistent power. Like our community just got some power towards it. We now pay for power, but we're one of the few buildings in our parish that even has power. And even our solar power is, because of the dust and the elements, continually breaks. So it is not like vaccines are not even an option, So I think these are those things of like, we think, oh, well, everybody can get a vaccine. Well, I can tell you, I know that the Ugandan rural communities that I've worked in are representative of many communities I've been around the world, in South America and in India and in Russia and in, Native American tribes here in America, where it's appalling how, that they're not also getting access to the vaccine, right? So I think, I feel like when I look at the Ugandan community or the community, OneMama community that I work in, it's not just that community. I really do think about the impoverished women rural women around the world that literally are not getting access to a stage or a voice or even an internet to make their voice heard. And so little organizations like us, where we try to lift our book, like your book, trying to lift voices of people who didn't normally get their voice elevated. I think we all have a responsibility to be a part of that. So anyway, it was a very long answer. I realize we're running short of time, so go ahead.
Yes, so I actually want to hand it over to Miss Nancy. So I'll transition over to Nancy so she can provide her insights. But it has been such a pleasure talking to all of you, and thank you very much for having me be here at CSW again. If not virtually, at least we made it this year, so that's good. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Well, Jessica, I actually have one more question for you.
Okay.
The growth that you've seen us go for the last 14 years. You saw me, I think you interviewed me in my first year or two of doing OneMama, and
yeah.
We've been part of this for 14 years. What do you feel like are the biggest indicators of growth or successes that you see from an outsider looking in, would you say?
I think it's all in the numbers of how many babies are being born safely now. So, and how many lives are being saved. I think when you really want to measure impact with something like what OneMama does, it's the central core of the mission. And that's, and I mean, of course there are celebrities wearing OneMama clothing, and that's pretty awesome. Thank you, celebrities, for your endorsement. But
but it's cool.
It's cool. But at the same time, I think the true impact measurement here is how many new babies are coming into this world safer, and how many lives have been saved, especially the lives of the mothers giving birth too. So yeah.
All right.
Well done.
Thank you, Ms. Jessica. You popped in for questions, so make sure you stay ready. And so we're now going to transition. Thank you so much, Jessica, for bringing my story to the surface. So I honestly never thought I would be putting on a public stage all the atrocities of my life. But Jessica is one of the people who helped bring that story to life when it was so hard for me to write it myself. And I didn't realize how much I had in common with so many women around the world, and how much sex trafficking and rape and abuse and, so many issues. I think 2/3 of the women on this planet are facing so many of these issues that I have faced as well. So it really was a nice way of giving my voice, and then also empowering me to make sure I helped other women, lifted other women up to give their voice, help them have their voice heard. So with that, I'd like to introduce Nancy. Nancy and I both work together at Amazon, and then we work for a division of Amazon called Amazon Web Services. I personally have been at Amazon for 10 years, 5 years as a consultant through my own recruiting consulting company, and then the last 4.5 years as an employee for AWS. I focused mostly on hiring a leader of leaders, and only focus on diversity hiring. So I really worked on taking these sort of sustainable development goals and bringing that into the corporate world, and the work I do with OneMama and bringing that into the corporate world of making sure that we have diverse leaders, especially gender focused, as well as marginalized communities like Black, Latinx, Indigenous leaders brought to the surface of some of the more powerful companies like Amazon. And that's been my life's work for a long time. It's what pays my bills. It's also how I met Nancy. So I met Nancy when she wanted to get a job at Amazon. And I actually used some of my leadership coaching and helped, bridge this relationship with her, and then found out she also had her own nonprofit and was doing amazing work for really lifting the voice for women in technology here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And then she finally, of course, got a job at Amazon, and now she's leading a whole technology team. So I'm going to let her talk about that. And her organization, Advanced Women in Technology, is just fun. It's a fabulous organization, and it really creates a lot of resources and networking for women and partners and allies to really have their voices heard, be able to be better advocates for themselves. I've done a lot of leadership coaching for this community to help them, be able to be better advocates for themselves in the interviewing process. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce you Nancy Wang, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about our partnership, and then I'm going to ask her some questions.
Thanks, Siobhan, and so happy to be here. Before I think we go into the Q&A, I'm super just honored, right? And it's one of those things where I feel like it was just fate that we met, because the more I got to know Siobhan and her interests and passions, what really drives her, and we got to see a large snapshot of that today, aligns a lot with what Siobhan mentioned is the nonprofit or organization that I lead outside of my full-time role. And the fact that, Siobhan's very dedicated to bring diverse leadership into our company, or just actually holding workshops to train women leaders, regardless of what company they're interviewing for, how to express themselves, how to frame their experiences in a way that puts them into consideration for leadership roles. I think you've certainly impacted many women with your efforts.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much. I love partnering with you, and I love to partner with your organization because it inspires me. It keeps me, excited about doing this work. And I do see the moving the needle, right? As we continue to bring more and more women that belong to your organization into the ranks of some of the top Fortune 100, 500 companies. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you. We still got a long ways to go, but to reach equal parity. But every step counts, right? And what we're doing right now is laying the foundation to making sure that when the next generation of leaders come up, right, it's 50-50.
Yeah. So looking around, there are obviously very few women in the technical leadership roles, especially in the top ranks of tech companies. If they didn't have that baked into their original charter, which most large companies now didn't have, what would you say is the root cause, and how are you, an Advanced Women in Technology, AWIT is what she calls it, planning to address that gap?
Sure, and this is, I think that solving the problem really takes approach from two ends of the life cycle. We see a ton of organizations like Girls Who Code or Black Girls Code and many organizations like that solving the early career problem, right? Because if you don't get your foot in the door, right, let's not even talk about getting promoted or becoming a leader. You need to first put yourself into the game. Now, I think the area where AWIT and myself choose to focus on is now that these folks are in the door, right? They've been in these Fortune 500 companies or FANG companies like Google or Amazon or Netflix or Apple. Now that they're ready for leadership positions, when they have the right experience, when they have the right support, how do they successfully make that leap? So because and this is where the topic of mentorship and sponsorship comes from, both of those relationships, just like friendships or maybe romantic relationships, takes a lot of trust, right, on either side. Trust from the sponsor that the sponsoree will do the right thing, right, and have the grit and perseverance to make that leap, but also trust from the person being sponsored that the sponsor has their best intentions in mind, right, and will continue to unconditionally support them towards their goal. So with that in mind, there's not really a perfect formula, although there are steps that companies can do to create an environment that fosters those types of relationships. So for example, I'll share a program that actually AWS, my division, is working on right now, which is an informal sponsorship program where business leaders like GMs or vice presidents will have the opportunity to nominate very high potential female and underrepresented leaders for this program. And then on the other side, it's kind of like a two-sided marketplace where then we will also source for leaders who have the capacity and also interest in sponsoring someone, right? Then we do this, the pairing of the sponsoree with the sponsor directly in a facilitated sort of town hall with a panel and then a networking session where the sponsor and the sponsoree get to meet one another and actually make their own selection choice based on their mutual fit, right? That's, I think, the perfect balance between what a company can do to facilitate that environment and then also what the individuals are doing to make that connection happen.
That's awesome. And I confirm that is like, there's several ingredients in the soup of really moving the needle of leadership for both gender and marginalized communities. And I think one of them is executive sponsorship, like knowing the right leaders and sort of tucking underneath them, learning kind of the tricks of the trade of how to become a leader and understanding that is just so critical. So I really love that about your organization. I feel like the other part is you've also, I think part of where we have shared a lot is that we're both, almost everyone on our board works a full-time job to pay our bills. And then we find all of these creative ways to work another full-time job, which is our nonprofit or NGO. And I feel like you and I have had many a session where we talked about, oh my God, how do I keep the baby running, right? So talk a little bit about ways that you have kept your organization running. I know you've had to pivot a lot during COVID and all of the changes with especially your role at Amazon, because it is such a big role that it requires a lot of your time and energy. So can you walk us through a little bit about ways that you have funded yourself and if there's any pivoting you've had to do?
Sure. In fact, actually, this is a common question I've got, especially during COVID, from other people who are either interested in starting their own nonprofits to address a social problem that they see, or folks who have or are currently running nonprofits who maybe need some advice on how to navigate COVID. For AWIT, just to start from our mission, right? Our mission is to promote more women and underrepresented minorities into tech leadership roles. So in order to do that, I never wanted AWIT to be a part of a company, right? So very early on, when I first started the organization, I was actually an employee at Google, not even at Amazon. And the conversation there was, well, why not take AWIT into a corporation, right? Then you will have unlimited access to essentially all the access you would need really to funding, and also maybe dedicated staff from a corporate side. I thought about that, certainly very lucrative, because at the time it was literally me and another volunteer, and we were trying to build this organization, establish our charter, staff the board, as well as get our partnership pipeline even started, right, and created. But at that point, I made the pivotal decision not to do that. And even today, when Amazon works very closely with Advancing Women in Technology, we try to maintain that independence, right? Just think of us as Switzerland. And the reason for that is we do not want to slant our mission or make it company specific, but rather it's a societal issue that we are trying to solve. And we bring companies to the table to help us solve that issue. So today, we work with venture capital firms like Madrona up here in Seattle, but we also work with a whole slew of startups like Fitbit or MongoDB, as well as big companies like Capital One, Amazon, I mean, you name it, right? So that way we can truly remain independent and also truly focused on what is the problem that we're trying to solve. In terms of funding, COVID has certainly provided some challenges in the sense that previously we were working with companies like, let's say, Capital One, who were donating a set amount so that we could afford operational costs to host webinars or actually host in-person workshops, or, for example, to host get-togethers or gatherings. Now that everything has been virtual, we've actually pivoted a bit of our strategy to working with online content providers like Coursera. So if you look online, Advancing Women in Technology has a specialization that's called the Real World Product Management specialization of 4 courses covering the business, technical, and also interview fundamentals that you would get from your typical 2-year MBA program, offered at a much more affordable cost, of course, through Coursera, and covering that entire breadth of content, right, for product management. And so that's what we're trying to do. And I'm super excited to announce, I just checked metrics as of this morning, that we have now had over 9.5K, close to 10,000 women and other individuals who have been educated from this specialization since we launched it in mid-September. So thinking about more impact at a global scale that is more scalable, because to Siobhan's point, right, running a nonprofit outside of my full-time job as a general manager at Amazon is a bit of a juggling act, right, time balancing act. So I also always ask myself, what is the way that I can impact the most amount of people with an hour or with 2 hours of my time?
Yeah, so definitely. And your work is great. And I love that, I think that's what true entrepreneurials or people who are wanting that change, you just have to keep pivoting. You have to keep, and I know you and I both have talked where we use our personal salaries to take care of stuff when we have to because we didn't get enough funding or enough rate that thing. So I know that these are the behind the scenes things that almost anybody I know who has a small NGO or charity really struggles with. The other thing that I think is really important about the work that you're doing is that, and I know that I've done some coaching for some of your community and I've been on several of your panels, is just really what I find in my own leadership coaching is that most women, we continue to select ourselves out, right? And we self-select ourselves out of leadership. That's there's tons of gender research around our own self-advocacy definitely needs coaching and needs support. And we need to help teach each other, lift each other up and lift ourselves up. And I really feel like your organization does a lot of that and it's so badly needed. And I think the fact that I too have made really strong choices to pick board members that are passionate and not financially passionate or are not going to lead. I've had some offers from organizations that I feel like would compromise my values of what the organization I'm trying to do. And I appreciate that was you done. Like sometimes that's a hard decision to make. When you see money coming, you're like, let me take that money because that will save this. But then you go down these other roads that are not what the value of that organization. And I think everybody who's on this, panel, we've all worked really hard to stay true to the integrity of making sure the voice of not only our voices are heard, but the communities that we support. And so I really appreciate that about you, Nancy, because again, what I find is the work that I do in rural, impoverished communities in places like Uganda, and women in technology at the highest levels who look like they have so much power, they're running with the same issues. They're running with this imposter syndrome. We don't feel like we're enough. We don't have the resources. We're doing the work of 10 people, whereas our male counterparts are not doing that. So, and I think your organization does a lot what I feel like I try to do for OneMama in Uganda, and you do it for women in technology. And that's part of where we've really partnered together a lot. Is there any sort of closing thoughts? I want to leave a couple minutes for questions, but is there anything you want to close out with?
Sure. I would say, for, of course, everyone in the audience, right? They're tuning in because they're passionate about solving one of the issues that they see facing women out there in the community. My closing thought is find something that you're passionate about, because it truly can make you better at your full-time job. The reason I say that is, I get the question a lot around how do you, manage Amazon as well as your nonprofit, and I'm also an active angel investor on the side, right? And the answer is truly make it so that it's truly something that you're passionate about, that you don't see it as work, but rather as a welcome, right? Vacation or respite, whatever you call it, from your day job, that actually makes you even more energized to do what you do for your paycheck, or as Siobhan would, say, pay the bills, right? Because there are going to be bills at a nonprofit. You have to pay the SaaS licensing fees whenever you rent out a venue or contractors or whatever it might be, right? And that's truly what I think, makes successful people who they are, is that they have a passion and they're not afraid of investing in that passion.
Yeah, great advice, Nancy. So thank you. So Lisa, would you like to give us some of the questions that are happening?
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone for staying so engaged too. We've had a lot of our wonderful attendees and dropping great questions to us in the chat. So I'm going to start off with a question from one of our OneMama delegates, Marty Rule, and just give Marty a shout out first, because she recently did a major fundraiser for OneMama on her birthday and managed to raise, I believe it was more than $3,000 for OneMama online through a dance party, invited her friends to come, had a friend instruct, and raised money for OneMama in a very creative way. So thank you, Marty, for all you do. Marty's question is the following: how are medical supplies acquired, and is Mama partnered with nonprofit suppliers?
So I used to try to bring medical supplies over. It just cost too much. I found pharmacies that are traditionally either Chinese or Indian run in Kampala. So I will go and buy them from there and then transport them to the clinic. We have not been able to create partnerships with medical companies, pharmaceutical companies in any reasonable way, honestly. And I find that very disappointing. I've been really trying to find partnerships with organizations or companies that provide birth control. When the political regime for United States came into power 4 years ago, they created a ban that was supposed to have banned abortions, but what it ended up doing was banning birth control. And so it was really challenging to get pharmaceutical, like any kind of birth control at our pharmacies that we went. So I was reaching out to all kinds of organizations to see if I could get birth control, and I just couldn't. So we found ways. I found other organizations that we would barter and trade with each other, different medical supplies, but it still continues to be a problem that's not ever hardly spoke about. A lot of women do not want to have their babies, but they choose between feeding their family or getting birth control, they're going to feed their family. And so, these kinds of things, something as simple as birth control can mean devastating things to a family if they don't have access to it. So, and these are things we provided with very little pay. Like it's a very minimal amount that they pay to receive birth control. So those are some of the things we're definitely looking. If anyone on this call has relationships with those organizations, we would love to partner with them, and definitely just reach out to info@onemama.org, and Abby and I will reach back out to you and set up a time to talk about that and how we do that. But yeah, it's a very challenging thing. But right now, at least there are pharmacies that are able to give us access to most medical supplies that we need.
And we just had some great responses in the chat too, so we'll jot down your information. I don't know if you're saying your name right, Jana, but and thank you, Gabriella, for chipping in there too. A couple other quick questions. Do we have time to do maybe 2 more questions, Siobhan?
I think so. I'm not sure what time this thing ends. We might just get popped off, but okay. Let's try to do 5 minutes of questions, and let's see the UN chop them off. All right.
Sure. So the next question is really a 2-part question, kind of compiled from questions from attendees. So part 1 is related to what you were just talking about. Both questions relate to how can people who are part of this event, and as we're reaching out to our own communities, best support OneMama. And I have that question in 2 parts that came from 2 different people. So one was related to what you talked about with the gag rule, and how the Trump administration had imposed the international gag rule, which made it more difficult to get birth control. So are there things in terms of political advocacy work that people can be doing to try to help reverse the gag rule, and through policy or through elections be helping make the situation better for OneMama and other global organizations? Part 2 is how can people who are part of this participating today best support Mama in terms of, should people, give, is a recurring donation most helpful? Is, reaching out with ideas, to info@onemama.org to share ideas or support most helpful? Like, how can people stay involved and engaged and help? So that was the 2-part question. Long.
Very long. Okay, so for the first part, it seems like political advocacy is so separate from OneMama, but it's not. Within a month of Trump getting into office, and I'm not trying to make a political thing, but that United States policy drove international issues, not just to my village in Uganda, but around the world, to predominantly rural women, because the NGOs that I partnered with that did get international or funding support, they no longer could partner with me and give access to the free birth control they were giving me, right? So it trickled down, even though I don't have government funding. And most charities were struggling with this, and most of us are little charities, so nobody's really listening. So I think your political, if you have political influence, who we vote for really does make a difference. And also in the European, both in Western markets, both in the US and in Europe, those political powers have more power, and probably Australia, than anywhere in the world. Right now, there's only 10 countries who have access to vaccines. Most continents do not have, most communities do not have access to the vaccines. That's partly political. That's not just about the vaccines, it's about access, right? And so these political powers play at B. So we need to have more women involved. I mean, I think Stacey Abrams, whatever you believe or don't believe about her, she in the United States, with a community of women predominantly, moved people to vote, moved people to become more involved in policy changes and political changes. And I think these are those things where if you are more politically minded, this is how you can get involved, that you think the grassroots are just about the United States. When you work in international work, like most of us do on this call, you realize you do something here, it impacts the whole world. Whether you think it does or not. And that's where we really have to be thoughtful of our privilege. If you were born in a Western country and you have the privileges of technology and you have the privileges of light skin, you have access and privilege to be able to do so much more than so many people. Doesn't mean you're better than, but you get access. And those political environments also create access. The second part of that is, how do you get involved? Get involved in whatever way you feel passionate about, like Nancy was saying, or like Jessica was saying. Like what Marty did, that brought tears to my eyes, because she just said, oh, I'm doing this for OneMama. It's like, oh, great, she'll raise a couple $100. She raised $3,000, and honestly, we weren't going to keep the clinic. I didn't know if I was going to have to close the clinic that month. Like, her having a dance party for an hour with all her best friends around the country and dancing to disco music somehow saved 1,500 lives. Like, how is that even possible, right? So you could do something fun and simple. You can do what Lisa's doing. You can do $25 a month. I mean, any nonprofit will tell you we need consistent revenue, right? It takes about $150,000 to $200,000 a year to keep this clinic running. Just one. And we're trying to build 250 of these to build this model wherever women live under these conditions in this 3-tier model. But right now, we're just trying to keep this one clinic open, right? And make sure that we can keep the services running so people aren't dying on our watch. So recurring donations is critical. You can buy the crafts and clothes while we still have them. You can join and participate in any of the other programs. But I think, you know, I also have volunteers who have an idea and they want to go find birthing kits for us, or go, if you want to get involved and go find birth control for us, oh my God, like create that. I saw somebody said they have a relationship with Bayer. Please go do that. Because here's the other side, is they want to give me an idea and have me go do it. I don't have enough bandwidth anymore. I don't. I work 3 jobs, 4 jobs, and I can't do it all anymore. So I need to activate all of you to be One Mama action heroes. And you fight for your life and you fight for the joy of other women just as much as I do, and Nancy does, and Jessica does, and Abby does, and Elizabeth does. We all have to do this together. And it's part of us all being a service. So whatever way you want to get involved, literally every $100 saves 50 lives. We have really making, you know, impact with very little money. So the more you guys can spread the word, get your families involved. One community, they got their whole church involved. One community, you know, did a barbecue and raised a bunch of money and, you know, had steaks while they did it. You know, there's just, everybody's got a million different ways that they can do it. And we're really looking, and I personally, I have health problems and I can't do as much as I used to. So I'm really asking to pass the torch a little bit and, you know, looking for other organizations who can help us with traditional funding, which I have never used. I've always used non-traditional funding, but now I need grants and I need other things that we can use to possibly do this. So any way you want to get involved, you know, I'm pretty creative, as you could probably tell by this presentation. So we're all excited to have you join the team like Elizabeth did. She found us at the UN 4 or 5 years ago with a hashtag. Now she's, you know, part of our board and she writes for us, and, you know, you never know how you're going to get involved. So I think I could probably answer one more question in 2 minutes. If there's anything else.
Yes, and I was just dropping in the chat too, and Abby could probably just do this as well, but just that if people have any ideas, as Siobhan said, about ways to partner or contacts that you've had or partnerships, those are so valuable. So drop us a note at info@onemama.org. And I do have one more question. I'll just quickly tell everyone, because this is an idea about ways that you can support. So I normally do my recurring donation of $25 a month. I have a milestone birthday coming up on April 15th. I'm actually turning 50, which I don't feel like that's my age, but biologically that's on my birthday. So in any event, I plan to try to recruit 50 friends and family members to give at least 25 a month and be action heroes, because that way that creates an ongoing stream of donations from my family and friends. So I'm going to be out there kind of recruiting before my birthday. And anyone could do that, of course. So the closing question is, I think that one of the things that's very unique about One Mama is your relationship with Mama Jamira, which really was the inception of all of this. And just the way that and I'm getting like teary-eyed talking about this, but the way that it's really, it's completely the community that drives everything, right? That it's, you know, I mean, I was so moved when the domestic violence prevention and educational initiatives got rolling. And it's really, you know, it's something where that was an issue in the community, and, you know, and everybody is engaged and kind of discussing where they need support, right? And how we can be supportive. But can you talk a little bit more about that kind of model, both your relationship with Mama Jamira, how pivotal that is, but also the ways in which you could kind of gather with community to figure out the projects where they need the most support? I think it's unique about this model, you know.
Well, I think, maybe it's because I didn't really have family. I didn't have a mother. I didn't have a traditional mother. I didn't have a traditional father. I was pretty much a feral child. So you bring this amazing medicine woman who wants to be my mother. I basically found a mama, and I was in the middle of postpartum from losing a baby. So the symbolism is there. So I'm sure there's lots of ways the universe created that situation for me. But she is just an extraordinary woman. And I think there's lots of extraordinary medicine women who are in rural communities that will never hear their voice. And she's one of those that the more I get to know her, the more amazing I find her. She truly is a medicine woman. She will take me through the garden and show me, oh, this herb does this. This herb will stop somebody from this. This herb will do that. She knows these things, and all of that. When she passes, I don't know if it will get passed. I'm trying to save that, but there's just this feeling of comfort. Me and her just had that connection, and we all have that with somebody, and I had that with her. And that's why I believe that this relationship and this organization is driven by something so much bigger than me. I'm just really the caretaker of this. And that relationship has healed my own trauma, my own PTSD. And I believe we all get these kinds of people who come into our life to help us be better at who we are and mirror back to us. So right now, there's a woman who's helping me write a story about how Mama and I, Jamira and I, actually have almost the same story, but from different continents, about how we've taken our trauma and we've transmuted it. She's a very unique Ugandan woman who lives alone, isn't married, and built her own business doing herbal medicine, right? So I think these are those things that I really relate to her. She relates to me. And then I've really tried to share her story as much as I can and lift it in the world. And then I think, this is why what Nancy had said and Jessica said, it's what you're passionate about makes a difference. Follow your heart, it's not easy to do this work on the side, but it feeds me, it heals something. And I think that's what all of us have to do. And I think that's what people believe. They trust me. They know that I don't take money from this, that I'm not doing this to be on any particular stage. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, because it's what I'm here to do. And I think those are those, people sense that. We know that, and we need to, and I feel like what I want this organization to do is not only help the Mama Jamiras of the world, but also inspire you to do this. Where are you having those relationships in your life that you can lift those in your community up? Where can you lift yourself up through your own trauma, your own issues, your own inequalities as a woman to lift others? Because what that does is it lifts us up. And that's what Mama Jamira continues to remind me. That woman, she's been giving birth to babies for 30 years. She still jumps up and down every time a baby's born. I mean, dude, I want to be that happy about my work still. So I think that those are the kinds of things that, emulate that. And that's what I'm trying to create also in the products and services that we create to fund the organization, that we keep the spirit of Mama Jamira in everything we do. And that's what One Mama means. It means the mama. It means the Mother Earth. It means the mama at the center. We're all come from a mother. We all are born from a mother. We all stand on Mother Earth, right? So, and Mama Jamira to me emulates that. And how can I emulate that? In everything I do is my continual inspiration. So I think that I will end with that. And thank you everybody for participating. I guess we're still recording. I would love to do a prayer. Coming to the condition status of women, Jessica will tell you I'm pretty much cried the whole 2 weeks. It's very intense. I feel the women's pain from around the world. It moves me. And so what I want us to do is I want us to all most of you aren't on video, so you don't have to, but if you can hold your hands up and just imagine you're holding the hands of all the women on this planet, all of their babies, all of their communities and families, that we all raise our hands in this united sunlight of love and spirit and joy and peace and harmony. And we heal all the transgressions, we heal all the pain, we heal all the revenge, we heal all of the areas where we feel unheard, unseen, and unloved. And we fill that with just pure joy and dancing and peace and resonance. And we take the wisdoms of our indigenous and our mothers and fathers' wisdom, and we breathe that in, and we breathe in Mother Earth and Father Sky, and we ask all of those that are holding hands together, the 9 billion people on this planet, we are all in one. We are all healed, and we are all in equitable love, peace, and joy. And we stand in that, and we transmute anything or any transfusions, and we stand in power and love. Om Peace Shanti. May we all go and be happy, joyous, and free. All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here, and please stay in touch. Drop us a note, info@onemama.org. We love you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everybody, for all of your good work. I appreciate you.
And likewise, Siobhan.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Love you, Nancy. All
Thank
right.
you, Bella. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, every beautiful person.
I will stay on actually for any question